Mega Man Issue 13. It starts with Dr. Light welcoming his children to the Advanced Robotics Trade Show. Roll and Mega Man think it's cool because they don't ever get to see other robots and robot masters. Dr. Light says that here the greatest minds compare notes and show off. Somehow his favorite kids ran off before letting him finish his boring dialogue, even though I'd expect them to have programmed them to be unable to do what he doesn't want, because he made them to be good helper robots. He said they're restricted by their coding. What else could that mean? He forgives them, and Roll gets excited about technology because she wants to upgrade her main server. She bumps into someone and apologizes, and a robot helps the girl up and gets mad at Roll overly easily considering that she's Dr. Light's famous creation, because he's protective of the girl, who's the daughter of Dr. Kozak, who made Pharaoh Man and vouches for Dr. Light, who hugs him, lampshading that he hasn't seen him in ages and doesn't know how he's been. Why didn't they keep in contact with email, or at least as pen pals? Dr. Light asks if anyone else from his old group of friends is here, and suddenly it turns out there's a purple-haired female scientist here. Why did he even have to ask? Is it extremely rare that an advanced robotics show would happen? While it's not impossible that someone in her job would dye her hair purple, it's so unlikely that it makes it hard to take her character seriously. And already the fact that Dr. Light has a crush on her does that to her. It's not impressive to have the only female robotics expert so far also somehow be a woman so attractive that Dr. Light calls her stunning. It's already unlikely that she'd be good looking. And it's also unlikely that she'd dye her hair purple when already women have a hard time being taken seriously in the STEM fields. Apparently she figured that if she'll never be taken seriously, she might as well do whatever she wants. The important thing is, she comes off like a Mary Sue right away because of her unrealistic hair color and lack of flaws, and already that applied to Rosie. I only didn't call her a Mary Sue because I just got introduced to her, and I'm still waiting for her to have a flaw. Usually the only flaw he gives any of his characters is that they can be an idiot at the drop of a hat, and it's too common to be enough. It seems tacky and unprofessional to have the only original female characters so far be Mary Sues with unrealistic hair colors I wouldn't expect from the Mega Man Classics series. Speaking of Mary Sue, she even has an uncommon name, Noelle, which isn't even spelled like you'd expect. I'll only give her a chance because I like her design and she's being harmless. I know Mega Man's really young, but that's not an excuse for thinking that all doctors of robotics know each other when he'd know it's a big planet with billions of people. Dr. Kozak isn't from this country as it turns out, so that's a little interesting. But it won't be interesting enough if what makes his own country different is never elaborated on. He calls Dr. Light fat and Noelle stands up for him, and Dr. Light says Roll keeps nagging him to exercise, and asks her if he finished her robot girl. And it turns out she's the one who made Quake Woman. Again, it doesn't matter what she's meant for if she isn't shown doing it. She says Kozak and their creations, which causes Kalinka to say that she's not a robot. If she actually isn't a robot, then her saying creations was forced. Dr. Light didn't expect Quake Woman to be boring and not personable. She says Quake required some alterations. I don't see why those would rob her of all emotion if she's meant for geological surveying. Dr. Light notices someone he used to know and says it's been years since they were in the Amazon. Finally, the story gets exciting when we see a vehicle in the jungle make some noise and Wily gets out of it, complaining that the mysterious EMP field is still active after so many years. Someone has to be here causing the EMP field, who is also conveniently able to stay in hiding. Wily says that between the local superstitions and the UN sanction of this place, he has it all to himself, and uses a sword he thought to have to cut buns. And he's out of shape enough to already be wheezing after just a couple of sentences worth of walking, somehow. Pharaoh Man says that Mega Man should be called Copy Man, explains his purpose boringly, And eventually Mega Man bumps into someone and apologizes to someone who's nervous around him when he should know him better than that. He's thanked for being polite, and everyone near him would hear him saying his code name and say he's checking in. Apparently they're too naive to get suspicious of him, but he made it obvious he's plotting against them right away to me. He's checking in with people spying on the place and waiting for the go-ahead. I'm told that Xander's hippie friend doesn't like his evil attitude and violent posture and says his team's here to change minds. So he wants him to mellow out while he deals with the scientists. He says his team's about protecting the people from themselves. If their goal is literally just that they naturally don't trust robot masters anymore, that makes perfect sense because of Wily, especially since the X-Series is their excuse for a future. Dr. Cossack starts the debate about advanced AI research, and welcomes Dr. Light to the microphone, who says thank you. The audience claps, and Noelle also says thank you to them when of course they did that. Dr. Cossack reveals that Noelle is going to debate against Dr. Light on this. I don't think this makes her flawed, because the X-Series proves that people in the series being afraid of robots who are sentient is very legitimate. Although, it constantly works out well for Mega Man that robot masters are smart enough to do stuff Wily wouldn't want. So it's actually a good thing that there's sentient robots with free will. If the original robot masters didn't have any free will, Mega Man wouldn't have been able to reason with them to the point where they end up destroying Copy Man for him. But it doesn't matter, because we know from the game they didn't need their help. What does matter is Quickman having the free will to give Mega Man healing liquid, which might have saved his life. That's what Dr. Light would point out in the debate if he were as smart as he should be, instead of forced to be stupid. He points out the obvious that smarter robots can do tasks with more efficiency and remove some danger from people's lives. They don't need almost total free will for that. So already his arguments failed, because what he's arguing for isn't simply smart robots. It's outright free-willed robots. Noelle asks why humanity would need their tools to think and feel on their own. This is probably what every robotic scientist in the real world thinks. And there's countless sci-fi fiction series portraying feeling robots as evil, so I don't blame her. Dr. Light says the more complicated the duties, the more smart the AI needs to be to manage them. That doesn't require emotions at all. If anything, negative emotions will weaken their ability to handle doing that kind of stuff. I figured that someone who usually writes characters to be too stupid wasn't capable of making them debate intelligently. She's not arguing against the point that making robots smart is good. She's saying they shouldn't have feelings. Even though it's an advanced AI research debate, not a should robots have feelings debate. And she does say that's not what she asked. He would have obviously known that. She says they don't need to make the robots feel good about a computation well done. It should be obvious that while it isn't necessary, it is morally good to make robots that love their jobs. Obviously, the only thing wrong with it is that the programmer had to take time out of his day to program them. Boo-hoo. Instead of saying that, he's somehow idiotic enough not to, and instead to say that robots are more complicated than a calculator. He'd know that she knew that and was just using it as an example to make her argument easy to understand. Only not very smart people would have a response like he did, cherry-picking some minor thing she said in her argument that had nothing to do with her overall point. She asks why they should give a robot a heart that can break, and make a robot that could break theirs. A robot could break their hearts regardless if it has the free will to do something it's not allowed to do, and both of them should know that. Noelle says they don't need to create a personal attachment to disposable tools. She's not making a good argument by calling them disposable. Now she just seems mean. She naturally asks how they could send robots into dangerous scenarios if they enjoy their company when it's self-destructive to bond with robots that could be destroyed. Dr. Light asks why they should even interact with other people at all following that line of thought. Naturally, because people have mortality too. Somehow, she asks where he made that connection. But somehow, Dr. Light doesn't simply explain why he said that, explain that humans are just as mortal, or even call her out on calling robots disposable. He just predictably says that he calls two of his robots his children and says that they enriched his life and helped him grow as a person. He doesn't simply explain how they have though. So why did he expect people to believe him? He said Roll was nagging him to exercise, but the way he said it doesn't seem like he does exercise. He could have said he's been losing weight because Roll nagged him to exercise. Though even that would have been something she'd have done without emotions because she was programmed to be helpful. This writer shouldn't write debates. He's making a fool out of Dr. Light when we're supposed to agree with him, even though I figured out he was sorta right. Barely, since if Sigma wasn't made later because people thought Robot Masters were great, then the future would be better. He says his kids brought him the same fears and joys of any parent, and no faceless, lifeless tool can do that. So that is a legitimate benefit to giving those robots emotions. She asks him about his Robot Masters. The jerk says, "What about them?" It'd be weird if the comic never addressed that the Robot Masters slightly resent him for this kind of attitude. Their only father doesn't think of himself as their father. You'd think they'd all be jealous of Roll and Mega Man. Rather than her saying that he only made a compelling argument for why you should give your robot kids emotions, she says that him giving the Robot Masters just as much personality didn't stop Wily from using them as weapons against humanity. She asks him if he considers the Robot Masters to be his friends, and he says yes. And she says it was hard enough on him to lose his creations. She says he weaponized Mega Man, which she should know would make him annoyed, and she naturally points out that because he considers Mega Man to be his son, it was harder on him to send him to fight. So when it comes to specifically the fight against Wily, which could have easily not happened, she's right. But in most cases, it's obvious that it is better for him that he loves him as a son because it makes him and his favorite robots happier. Mega Man pets his dog, who's intelligent enough to be sad about this because it was of course made able to understand English. Wily's glad it's less humid in the temple, and somehow he decided to touch the wall for no reason, like he's never watched an Indiana Jones movie, which forces the concept of him sliding down a sudden slide, and he tumbles down a rocky hill and takes a short fall. I want to see a lot more slapstick with him, not with gore though. Then he sees what looks like a jellyfish with a big black balloon strapped to it. It looks too weird to be a robot, so maybe it's an alien. He sure would have a sad life staying here all the time, because he'd have no one to talk to. So I hope it's explained that he was deactivated the whole time and only causing the MP field passively. Or I'd be wondering how he doesn't suffer from most of the effects of solitary confinement if apparently Wily's the first person to talk to him in forever. Dr. Light was obviously stumped by Noelle's question because he changes the subject completely and asks her if her current view has anything to do with Quake Woman, and emphasizes the word current and asks her if she was planned to be at the same level of personality as Rock. She was also going to be used for research in very unstable environments, so he destroyed his own argument there. Of course she thinks that she shouldn't have feelings if she's going to be tormented by being forced to deal with unstable environments. That's what she would say. But instead, Dr. Cossack tells him not to make things personal, and I just have to hope this is what she's going to say. Someone announces that she's right that all of the advanced robots need to be prevented. After all, if they were prevented, there'd be no more dangerous robot masters. While Wily could always make his own, so it doesn't matter if people make their own, because he doesn't need to take over them. He would need to do that if he ran out of resources, or simply wanted to save a lot of time. Someone says on a screen that the robots need to be destroyed for the future of mankind. If he wanted to change minds, he would have said before this that Wily taking over them was inevitable, instead of just having his group still look like criminals. If Legends is canon to those, then humanity is destined to go extinct because of all the robot wars. But I still sympathize with the good guys here because they're in danger. There's a power outage, and Electman's asked if he can handle that. And I like that he says a lot of people have asked him to charge their phone. He says it'd be more exciting than doing that. But he shouldn't be programmed to be able to have a problem with being asked to charge people's phones, when he was made to be helpful with his electricity. It was smart of people to ask him to help them, and I'm glad he was doing something useful. He talks to one of the security guards who points a gun at him telling him to back off. And he tells all of the humans to head for the main exit. He expects all the robots to stay where they are for no reason. The only reason they'd humor them is that less people trying to escape means more room for the humans to escape. And already there's the risk of people getting stampeded trying to run out of the building. But that isn't guaranteed to happen because there's not that much of a reason to hurry. Roll gets Kalinka to safety and hides behind a wall as she's worried about her dad, and Roll tells her Dr. Cossack is safe. Not if he'll be in the same room as a bomb. If Roll's looks are famous, she won't be able to pretend she's human anyways, and I'd expect her to be famous. So it would be confusing if she wasn't recognized. A guard tells the humans to hurry up, and a robot catches her, and Electric Man tells a guard who tells people to hurry that she should take it easy on them because it's dark. Feralman asks someone if she's alright, and Electric Man says he was programmed not to hurt humans. He naturally says he never thought he'd want Wily's coding back because with it, he would be able to fight the guards. Mega Man assumes the doctors need protection, which only makes sense because they could build more robots, so logically they would be targeted for destruction by the spears. The story ends there with the text box saying that there's thousands of lives in danger, which would only make sense if by lives it just meant robot lives, because the writer should remember that the humans were told they aren't in any danger, and it doesn't look like there's thousands of people who can make robots here, as we only saw a few roboticists, somehow. And all most of them would have to do is take off their lab coats, and they'd be able to escape the building no problem if they did so without a guard seeing them first. This issue is about Wily going through an Amazon temple, and his only challenge is taking a little fall that doesn't look like it injured him, and Dr. Light's colleague destroying him in a debate in favor of making robots have feelings, because he was forced to be too stupid, making arguments that he should know aren't proving that all robots should have feelings, and instead just argues in favor of their intelligence, which isn't the same. And his only good argument is that his kids should have feelings, which only applies to them. Meanwhile, the writer's new favorite character is always right in her arguments, pointing out that what he wants is unnecessary. And I have to assume she means that it's cruel to give robots with dangerous jobs feelings. Too bad she didn't get to outright say that because a well-intentioned group of people wants to kill all the robots. It helps you sympathize with them by having them tell the humans to leave first, when they'd be more competent if they simply blew up the building instantly. But one of them wants to change minds, and making a bunch of humans into martyrs would do nothing but make people want smart robots all the more just to spite them. So I wish he explained that. Dr. Light should have said that if Quickman didn't have free will, he wouldn't have given Mega Man some healing liquid to drink, and ensured he'd survive their fight and save the world for everyone. Not to mention it resulted in Copy Man being destroyed for Mega Man. So robots having feelings could constantly end up benefiting Mega Man in his adventures. While I accept him losing the debate because she was right, I can't imagine why the writer didn't even let Dr. Light have a very strong point she agreed with even once, when he'd know better than that. Unless he really does favoritize her that much that he can't stand to have her be confronted with an argument she can't debunk. Meanwhile, he did that to Dr. Light, as he changed the subject, because I guess he didn't want to upset Mega Man by saying she was right. But since Dr. Light isn't always a good father and has a lot to answer for, he deserves to lose a debate in front of everyone. As frustrating as it is that he's made a fool out of being uncharacteristically stupid. So ultimately, I guess I could say it's a good issue, because not only was it original, but I found debunking its arguments to be interesting. It was fun feeling smarter than him, and it took up enough of the story, although almost nothing happened with Wily. The only good argument anyone could have for Dr. Light's point of view was the Quickman thing.